welcome back. Today we are going all the way back to the basics. And what I mean by all the way back to the basics, I mean adding and subtracting fractions with different denominators. But before we talk about that, how about we talk about the ones that do have the same denominator? And I can't think of a better example than 1/2 plus 1/2. Now I know what you're thinking. 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1, right? Well, have you actually ever thought about computing 1/2 plus 1/2? So let's say that I give you 1/2 plus 1/2. Now the reason we can add these two fractions together is because they have the same denominator. So when they have the same denominator, we can go ahead and combine the numerator. So I'm going to go ahead and combine the numerator, which is 1 plus 1 all over 2. 1 plus 1 is 2, so now we have 2 over 2. 2 over 2 is basically just 1. So now that you have the basics, let's move on with adding fractions with different denominators. So let's say I give you 1/3 plus 1/2. We cannot add the numerators together in this case. Why? Because the denominators do not match. So what am I going to do? I'm going to write out all the multiples of 3 and all the multiples of 2 to see if we can get a common denominator. So if I take all of the multiples of 2, so I'm going to say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And if I find all the multiples of 3, it's going to be 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. So now, right away, I want to see what multiples do we have in common. The multiples that we have in common is the number 6. So I want to ask myself, what can I multiply the top and the bottom by with each fraction to give me a common denominator of 6? So I'm going to put a question mark here and a question mark here. I'm going to put a question mark here and a question mark here, because we want to ask ourselves, what can I multiply the top and the bottom by to give us a denominator of 6? Well, we know that 2 times 3 is 6, right? And we also know that 2 times 3 is 6 over here. So what do I need to multiply the top and the bottom by to give me a common denominator of 6? I want to multiply the top and the bottom of this fraction by the number 2. So I'm going to say 2 times 1 over 2 times 3 plus, and what am I going to multiply the top and the bottom by? In this case, we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the number 3. So I'm going to say 1 times 3 over 2 times 3. And now it's just computation from here. So I'm going to say 2 over 6 plus 3 over 6. Now we have a common denominator, and so now we can multiply our, now we can add our fractions together. So I'm going to combine the numerator, which is 2 plus 3 all over 6. Well, 2 plus 3 is 5. So our final answer is 5 over 6. All of these are equal. And 5 over 6 is our final answer. So how about we try another example? Okay, so our next example is going to be 2 over 5 plus 3 over 10. So if I say 2 over 5 plus 3 over 10. Now this one is actually a little easier because 5 actually goes into 10 perfectly. So we only need to manipulate the first fraction, but for the sake of practice, how about I show you the computation behind it? So I'm going to go ahead and write out the multiples of 5. So for the multiples of 5, we have 5, 10, 15, and 20. I'm just going to write out just a few. And our multiples of 10 is 10, 20, 30, and Alrighty, so now let's look at our least common multiple. Our least common multiple is a 10. So in order to manipulate these fractions to give us a common denominator, I want to multiply the top and the bottom of 2/5 by the number 2. Why? Because if I say, I'm going to come over here and just rewrite our fraction out. Okay, and so again, to manipulate this denominator, we want it to be a 10, right? So in order to make our denominator a 10, we need to multiply it by the number 2. But in order to multiply it by the number 2, we have to also multiply the numerator by the number 2 because we have to obey the laws of mathematics. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the number 2. Now 10 can stay as is. Why? Because we said that our least common denominator is a 2. So, I'm sorry, our least common denominator is a 10. So we can just leave it as is, but for the sake of practice, how about I just multiply the top and the bottom by a 1, because why? 10 times 1 is 10, right? So we're not changing the fraction, but if you were to multiply the top and the bottom by something, if you had a choice, that would be your choice. But 1 over 1 is just 1, so like I said, we can leave it as is. So I'm going to come out and finish computing. So 2 times 2 is 4 in the numerator, 2 times 5 is 10 in the denominator, and then we have 3 times 1 is 3, and 10 times 1 is 10. So you see the fraction did not change. Okay, so now we can go ahead and combine the numerator. So 4 plus 3 all over 10, and we keep the same denominator. Okay, so and so now we have 7 over 10, right? Okay, so that is our final answer. Now, what if I were to subtract the fractions? Well, subtraction is the same. So if I were to just use our same example here, okay, and let's say that I change my example, and let's just say I give it a minus. I come here and I also give it a minus, and I come here and I also give it a minus, and I come here and I also give it a minus. The only thing changes is this numerator, okay? So 4 minus 3 in this case is a 1. So you see, nothing changes. The only thing changes is that we subtract the numerator instead of adding the numerator. That, my friends, is how you add and subtract fractions using different denominators. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like and comment. Have a good day. Bye.